Level 1. The refusal. You are 19. The financial aid office has a form on the desk in front of you, already half filled out. Your name, your parents' income, a signature line. All you have to do is sign it, and $6,400 lands in your account by September. You don't sign it. Not because you have the money. You don't. You have $1,100 from 2 summers of stocking shelves, and a state school acceptance letter that costs more than that per semester. You sign up for the maximum number of credit hours the community college allows instead, and you tell the advisor you'll transfer in 2 years, once the transcript is built and the money is saved. Nobody around you understands the decision. Your roommate takes out $9,000 that same week without reading past page 1 of the disclosure. He doesn't do it recklessly. He does it the way everyone does it, the way it's presented to you, as the normal cost of becoming someone. You work weekends at a hardware store. You take the bus. You don't buy the laptop you want. You buy the refurbished one that does the job. There is no ceremony to any of this. It just looks like a slightly harder version of an ordinary week. The decision doesn't feel brave. It feels inconvenient. That's the part nobody puts in the brochure. The debt-free path doesn't announce itself as a strategy. It just quietly costs you time and comfort up front, before it costs anyone else anything at all. Level 2. The comparison. 2 years later, you transfer. Your friend Priya, who took the loan on day 1, is finishing her degree the same semester you are. Same school, same major, same graduation photo practically. The difference is invisible in that photo. It's sitting in 2 separate places neither of you can see, her account and yours. She graduates with $31,000 in student debt at 6.8% interest. You graduate with $0 because it took you an extra year, 3 part-time jobs, and 1 summer you didn't take off at all. At the graduation party, someone asks what your loan payment is going to look like. You say you don't have one. There's a small pause, the kind that happens when an answer doesn't fit the conversation everyone else is having. Then the topic moves on, because there isn't really anywhere else for it to go. This is the part of not borrowing that's easy to underestimate. It isn't rewarded socially. Nobody throws you a party for a debt you don't have. The relief is real, but it's private, and it will stay private for a long time. Level 3. The first test. You're 24. You need a car. The dealership has a payment plan ready before you've even said a price out loud. $340 a month, 6 years, and you could be driving it home tonight. You buy a 9-year-old sedan instead for $5,200 cash. Money you built over 14 months by not doing the things your coworkers do without thinking. No new phone, no streaming bundle, no dinners out that you can't remember a week later. The car isn't impressive. It has 98,000 miles on it and a sound from the back left wheel that a mechanic tells you is nothing to worry about, probably. You worry about it anyway for the first 2 months. Then you stop. Your coworker Malik buys the newer version of your car the same year, financed, $410 a month, including the extended warranty he was talked into at the counter. His car is quieter. It smells new. He mentions this more than once. The math is not dramatic yet. It rarely is at 24. But somewhere underneath both decisions, one of you now has $410 a month of the future already spoken for, and the other one doesn't. Level 4. The pressure. You're 27. This is the year the refusal gets expensive in a way it hasn't before. Malik and 2 others put a bachelor party trip on a card between them. Split 3 ways, still 4 figures each, still something none of them can pay off that month. You're invited. You do the version you can actually afford. You fly in for 2 nights instead of 4, and you skip the boat excursion that costs more than your monthly rent. Nobody says anything unkind about it. But there's a specific kind of quiet that shows up in a group chat when 3 people are planning something you're not fully part of. You notice it, you sit with it, you wonder, on the flight home, whether the whole plan, no loans, no financing, no worry about it later, is actually a discipline, or just a slower way of missing your own life. You don't have an answer that week. You just keep doing the thing you were already doing, because stopping doesn't actually solve the discomfort. It just trades it for a different, more expensive one. Level 5. The numbers start talking. You're 30. This is the level where the story usually gets a graph, so here's the graph in words instead. Priya's original $31,000 loan, at her real minimum payments, took 11 years to clear and cost roughly $12,000 in interest on top of what she borrowed. She's debt-free now, finally, the same year you've been debt-free since the day you graduated, 9 years ago. Malik's car loans, because there were 2 of them by now, one right after the other, have quietly cost him somewhere around $9,000 in interest across both. Money that produced nothing except the ability to drive a car that depreciated the entire time he was paying for it. You haven't done anything remarkable with the difference. You put it where interest works for you instead of against you. A retirement account, a modest brokerage account, nothing that makes a good photo. But the number is no longer small. It's not life-changing yet either. It's just a number that's been quietly growing in the background of an otherwise ordinary decade, while 2 friends were paying off numbers that were quietly shrinking in the background of theirs. Nobody at this stage can see the gap from the outside. All 3 of you look, broadly, like people doing fine. Level 6. The cost nobody talks about. Here's the part that Never Take a Loan videos usually skip because it complicates the moral. At 33, your sister needs $4,000 for a medical bill her insurance won't fully cover. You have it, sitting in an account, doing nothing dramatic. You give it to her without a second loan, without financing, without a form. It's not a sacrifice. It's just there. Malik wants to help too. He can't, not right away. Not because he doesn't care, but because his money is already spoken for by 2 car payments and a credit card he's been meaning to pay down since his wedding. He feels it. He says so, quietly, once. This is the actual value of the discipline. And it's not the number in the account. It's the option. The ability to move when something in your life actually needs you to move, instead of discovering you already promised that money to someone else 3 years ago. Level 7. The arrival. You're 40. You've never once made a loan payment in your adult life. Not for school, not for a car, not for anything you could instead wait and save for. This did cost you things. It cost you a newer car at 24. It cost you 2 nights of a 5-night trip at 27. It cost you a slower degree and a longer runway to your first real job than some of your friends had. None of that disappeared. It happened, and it was genuinely inconvenient at the time. What it also did, it left you with no interest paid to anyone, ever, on anything you consumed instead of built. Priya, debt-free now too, has said more than once she wishes she'd waited the extra year the way you did. Malik, still making a car payment at 40 on his 3rd vehicle, isn't unhappy. He's just permanently 1 car behind the version of himself that could have existed without the payment. There's no swelling music at 40. Nobody hands you anything. You're sitting in the same kind of ordinary room you've always sat in, except now the room is fully, uncomplicatedly yours, and there is no month where a piece of your income already belongs to a decision your 19-year-old self didn't make. Level 8. The actual point. The point was never, loans are evil. Loans built the road you drove your $5,200 car on. Used well, for something that produces more than it costs, at a rate you actually understand. They're just a tool. The point is smaller and less dramatic than that. It's this. Every loan is a conversation with your future self, and most people have that conversation without reading the transcript. They agree to a version of tomorrow they haven't actually looked at, because today is asking for an answer right now, and no feels harder in the moment than yes, I'll deal with it later. You didn't do anything the algorithm would call a hack. You just kept reading the transcript before you signed it. Every time, for 21 years, and let today be a little harder so that tomorrow didn't have to be. The coffee's not even part of this one. You just finish your day the same way you started it, owing nothing to anyone but yourself.